everyone. My name is Elena Muley, and I am the Vice President of Collective Impact and Social Innovation at the United Way of Southern Nevada. We've heard a lot of talk today about research and data, and one of the things that we're trying to do in our new strategic direction at United Way is to use data and research and innovation to make better informed decisions about the impact that we have on the community. So one of the things that we wanted to introduce to all of you here today is a new tool that we've released called Community Connect. It is an online hub for information that brings together programmatic information, community data, community trends, and community stories to help us understand what are the biggest issues in our community and how can we come together to solve them. So if you wouldn't mind watching the screens, we'd like to play a quick video that shows you what Community Connect is and how it works.
Community Connect by United Way of Southern Nevada is an easy-to-use online hub for local information and stories. Updated in real time, it is a research and communication tool where you can find ways to create and support positive social change. Let's look at what Community Connect can do. Starting on the home page, you'll notice 4 focus areas: demographics, education, financial stability, and health and well-being. You can click into each focus area to see how the community is doing in key indicators. For a summary, click the button below Education. This gives an overview of education that you can easily print and share, and these quick reports are available for each focus area. For more detailed information, let's click into Community Data. Here, you can get a profile of a particular neighborhood and compare it to other neighborhoods in Southern Nevada. If you want to learn more about a specific indicator, you can scroll down and choose from our list of 26 community indicators. For instance, if we click into Educational Enrollment, you can see how the community is doing compared to the county, state, or country. You can customize your view of the information by choosing different view options. You can also share information directly to social media or download the information to make your own reports. Want to take action on the information you're viewing? Scroll up to find ways to give, advocate, volunteer, or tell your own story. To see all of the stories, let's click Community Stories. Here you can see stories of people who help our community and those who've received help. You can view stories by exploring the map or by focus area. You can also tell your own story and share pictures or videos of your experience. Get around Community Connect faster with quick links at the bottom of every page. You can go back to community data or stories, or find resources to understand United Way's work and offer a deeper look at the information through community reports. These reports explain trends in the information and share ways for you to make a difference. Community Connect, where information leads to positive change for Southern Nevada.
So thank you for taking a minute to watch that. As we developed this, it helped us aggregate information to help United Way understand how we could do our work better. But we're really excited to offer this as a free and open tool to the community because we envision that lots of other stakeholder groups could also benefit from it. And one of those groups we thought would be elected officials, that it could help them to better understand their constituents and also help their constituents be more civically engaged. So with that, I have the honor of introducing our next panel, the Nevada Legislature panel. This is new to the program for the College of Education this year, but they invited representatives from both the State Assembly and the State Senate to have a discussion on how the 2017 legislative session went and to look forward at what we might be able to expect in the 2019 session. So please join me in welcoming Becky Harris, State Senator for Nevada's 9th District. Tyrone Thompson, State Assemblyman for Nevada's 17th District. Joyce Woodhouse, State Senator for Nevada's 5th District. And our moderator, Valera, Vice President of Government Affairs and Compliance at UNLV.
Well, good. Well, thank you all for being here today. Thank you to our legislators for making the time. One of the dirty little secrets nobody tells you when you run for Nevada legislature is that even though the legislature only meets every other year for 120 days and you get paid for those days, you end up having to participate year-round in a lot of other legislative activities. So we appreciate your service and your time here today. So we have some questions, of course, for the panel from the audience. But if there's anything that you would like to open with, or any comments that you would like to make on the previous session, I would certainly welcome that opportunity if you would like to start.
Thank you. I've been here all day, and I would just like to say, first of all, to the College of Education and to Dean Metcalf, that this has been an incredible morning and afternoon, and I learned things today that I had not heard about before, and also I think one of the things too that struck me is the conversations today, the presentations today are ones that have gone really, really deeply into the issues that face education, both K-12 and higher ed, but most importantly, how they affect our children. And I think that's really, really critical that we all take that to heart. And I'm thrilled that the room is still full at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so that we can continue to talk about these kinds of things, because as we said this morning, it's going to take all of us working together to continue to make the kind of changes we need to for our students to be successful.
Thank you, Senator Woodhouse. Senator Harris?
I think some of the things that are important for Nevada legislators are building pathways from K through 12 education to higher ed, and you saw this last legislative session where we attempted to do a lot of that with our apprenticeship programs, with the Promise Scholarship to help children who have difficulties getting into college find those last dollars so that they can enter at a community college level and then make another transition to a four-year university if that's appropriate. I think finding more bridges and more connections between our K through 12 system and our higher education system is critical. I also think finding more connections between our education process, whether that's apprenticeships, micro-certificates, certificates, 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees, or advanced degrees to our workforce is also critical. And Nevada has worked really hard to do some economic development around those types of issues to make sure that our students are getting the education that they need to enter a workforce that's going to be ready for them. So I hope today that there's been some conversation around that. And issues that are important to me are children who struggle, who have issues with credit retrieval, and how do we help them make those transitions from a K through 12 education to some kind of workforce innovative opportunity, whether that's some of the things that I've just mentioned or something yet to be created. And part-time students, lastly, I think is an important important topic for conversation if you haven't had opportunity to engage in those types of discussions. I know that for Nevada students, it's incredibly difficult to hold down a full-time job and obtain higher education, and often the resources aren't packed in around our part-time students the way that they need to be to help ensure their discussion. So as you go back into your communities after today's conference, I hope you'll start having conversations about the way that we can begin to look in on the different types of students that Nevada has and how we can work for everybody's success.
Good afternoon, everyone. Everybody wake up. Good afternoon. I'm going to tell you, it's really hard because these are the most comfortable chairs for me, so I got to say that back to myself. But I'm really honored and pleased to be here today. One thing that Mr. Valera said, are we real formal today, or are we Louis?
Fire away.
Okay, anyway, I want to address you properly. Is that we as legislators, and many times people think, or maybe the general population thinks that, okay, we elected you in, you should know everything about every issue that comes your way, and that truly, and we all know that that is truly not the reality. One thing for myself is that I can say is that I was really honored this last legislative session, because once you go through your election and everything, and then if you are the House in the majority, then there's a selection of chairs. And I was just really pleased, honored, and shocked that I was selected to be the chair of education, being that I am I don't have a professional educational background, but the speaker saw in me that being born and raised here and always working in the community, and most importantly, always pretty much having a good grip of where the disparities are, he entrusted me with our children, so to speak. And I must say that the interim work, the work that we're doing today, and I want to thank Dean Metcalf for really allowing us this forum to happen, is because we need to get more information. And then if there are some laws that were passed that were like, boo, and we need to do better, we need to make them to where they are, hey, yay, we need to make them better. Some may always remain as boo in some of our lives, but there's always that opportunity. And I can say for the two that I'm sitting with here today, I think we're pretty open to looking at things, because Senator Harris, in 2015, she was the chair of education, and she was very fair with me. It was kind of like going to the principal's office, but you know, when you're trying to get your bill passed, it's like, you know, you have to really work your bill. And so I'm really looking forward to the questions. I know you have some questions, but my quick little metaphor is, as a legislator, I went to Camp Anytown. How many people have gone to Camp Anytown? Or have heard of Camp Anytown? Anyway, it's a camp in the community. I went when I was 16, so 34 years ago. I went to this camp, and there was this activity called Privilege Walk. And I actually facilitated now through Leadership Las Vegas. And basically, everybody's all lined up shoulder to shoulder when they start. Well, you talk about the American dream, and there's a series of questions. I don't want to give it all away, but series of questions. But pretty much when it's something positive, you move forward. When it's something that's not seen as you know, kind of negative, you move back. And so I just always see as my role is that, you know, not everybody has that level playing field. And so it's my role to make sure that I can do my piece to try to make it as whole as possible. So
Very good.
Looking forward to the conversation.
Sure. So Senator Harris, you touched on this earlier in your comments, so I'd want to start back with you. Having anticipated a number of the issues during the last session and of the hundreds of bill draft requests that may or may not become a bill, and of those that may or may not get a hearing or move through the legislative system, of those that you anticipated coming, whether you were the author of them or not, were there any surprises? Were there any issues that you thought were going to go in one direction but ended up not, or maybe didn't get the traction, the attention that you thought they might get?
Funny you should ask that question. I had a bill that would have required a library to be in every public school here in Clark, or actually throughout the state. And literacy is a challenge for Nevada. We have some concerns with how to best help our children, and there's a lot of discussion around the best ways to do that. But fundamental to education for me is a library in every public school, and so I actually brought that legislation because I think it's just so critical, and it received really good it was favorably reviewed, and there was a lot of support in the Education Committee, and Joyce was on the Education Committee with me and was very invested in that piece of legislation. The challenge, though, comes around funding, and we have so many different ways that we need to look at education funding, from equity to funding formulas for North and South to capital improvements to just a variety of challenges and different hands out for pieces of that education budget. And while we valiantly worked hard to provide for those resources in every school, at the Finance Committee, we were just unable to secure the necessary funding in the budget. I will continue to work on that particular piece of legislation as we head into 2019 because it's critical. Librarians provide they're just a force of nature, and they provide so much interest for children, particularly those who struggle as readers. And when you can provide children with a reason to read, when they can enjoy that activity, they don't learn to read, they become readers to learn. And I think that enhances and transcends the educational probabilities and possibilities for children. And so for me, that's just a critical issue, and I had hoped that it had a more successful outcome in 2017, but onward.
Thank you. Senator Woodhouse, the same question to you of the many issues that we all anticipate, and certainly you being in the position of being a committee chair and being in leadership. What surprised you most of the issues that maybe either did get traction and moved farther than maybe anticipated, or maybe some that didn't?
Well, there are some on both sides. Heading into the 2017 session, I think almost all of us, I believe all of us, had great feelings and hard work going into changes in the K-12 funding formula. And as many of you know, that formula was built back in 1967, which is 50 years ago, and we all know that Nevada has changed. In fact, I can tell you that in 1967, I had an apartment with 3 other teachers just down the street on the corner of Flamingo and Maryland Parkway. There were a few buildings on this campus, and if you went down to Tropicana, to the Safeway store, that was as far as you could go in this part of the city. And I think the main thing, too, to remember is our student population has changed dramatically, especially here in Southern Nevada. And we were trying to address that in the K-12 funding for it, and we talked about that a little bit this morning with the other panel. So that was one of the things that we had great plans for, that we were going to be able to take it from where we were, which was a little bit of movement that we made, well, and not just a little bit. We made a lot of movement in 2015 and 13 as well, when we put in the Zoom money and the Victory money, and we added to that, and we continue to add to that. But we have to address the fact that these pots of money are categorical, they're outside of the funding formula. We did put some additional dollars into the basic support guarantee, but it's not nearly enough to address the needs of our children, and particularly in the area of special ed. So I was glad that we were able to do the changes that we made, particularly in the budget itself and in Senate Bill 178, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But I think one of the things, too, I was thrilled, and Dale Urquiaga talked about it at lunch. We did continue those programs that the governor and Dale helped us put in place in 2015. Just a myriad, a number of additional programs that would be helpful to students and our teachers, and we moved them on forward to the next step. We need to continue to do that. I think probably the thing that I got no traction on at all, and not because people didn't care. We all cared, but myself and Assemblywoman Olivia Diaz had a bill for early childhood education. But under the circumstances of not a lot of money available, we were not able to move either one of those bills, mine or hers. So that's one I'm going to be pursuing again. And the other one that I'll bring up that I think, and I hope that Tyrone and Becky will help on this one too, prior to going into the 2017 session, I heard a lot of concern from teachers and administrators in our buildings, particularly our elementary schools, about Read by Grade 3. Not that it's not a good program. I totally support the program. We want our children to be able to be reading on grade level at the end of grade 3, but there are some problems inherent in that with retention of students. And I was a first grade teacher, and I've retained children in the years that I was in the classroom teaching those children. But there are ramifications when you do that. So I think that's one of the things that this next session I would hope we could look at. We need to keep the program, but we need to find a way to solve the glitches that we have in it.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. Mr. Chairman, I think you're uniquely positioned as chairman of your committee. You have a particular vantage point, so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
And I think I just wanted to tag on to what Joyce was saying, is that with the Read by 3, I actually had a bill, and unfortunately it was labeled as a repeal bill, and that was not the intent. There was a lot of work put into Read by 3. And we know that everybody wanted to say, hey, our children, we don't want to do social, just graduating people socially, just because they show up and giving that social promotion. But when we saw, I worked with a group of psychologists that said, hey, Assemblyman, there's going to be around 30,000 students in our state that are on the trajectory to be held back. So we're literally gonna have 2 second grades. And so basically a lot of the key points that I put in there was that it wouldn't be automatic, that it would be a choice of the parent, the teacher, and so on and so forth. Let's make a collective, and this goes back to the year 1967. I'm gonna plug it in there too. That's the year I was born. And so I was born on September 30th, which actually is it's a different type of day. It's a day to decide if your child will stay home or go to school. And y'all can tell I talk a lot, so my mom said, he's going to school. So I had to go to school because that was the deadline date. So I graduated at 17 years old instead of 18. So that's one thing about that. But the 3 ahas that I would say, and I just have to applaud our governor. He and his staff, the first are ESAs. Nobody brought that up yet, but education savings accounts was one that, you know, that was one that was a aha. The second was Achievement School District. And just to give you a little brief overview of Achievement School District is that giving an overview of the lowest performing schools throughout the state. There's a certain number that the Department of Education and a formula that they look at, and they look at those schools and they take approximately, I think, is it 8? About in this round, it's about maybe 8 or 9 schools, and where they now create a model to come into the school and create a different type of learning strategy. I'll put it that way. And so it was favorable to many, but yet it also was it was kind of seen as you're taking away our school from our kids, and you can't do that. So that was, again, that was a aha to me. But one thing that I can say about Achievement School District is in the interim, I actually got pulled aside and almost literally by a group of mothers that have been working on this for a while. And they said, we just need 30 minutes of your time. We talked for 2.5 hours at Doolittle Community Center. And we shared and bounced ideas off of how this could work. And then lastly was the sex education bill. Because having comprehensive sex education that's age appropriate has been something that has been worked on in the legislature for years. And Assemblywoman Amber Joyner, which unfortunately she's not going to be joining us back in 2019, she worked really hard on that. And that's one thing as an author of a bill, you have to be lenient and willing to amend and so on and so forth. And it got all the way up to where it needed to go, and then it was vetoed. So I would say that those were the 3 ahas.
Great. So you brought up amending a bill. So that's really my next question, and to you, Senator Harris. As we all know, pieces of legislation often get amended, changed, they evolve. What would you say informed a lot of those changes? I mean, could you point to what is it that impacted most those changes or that evolution in the language of pick a bill, whichever one you'd like to discuss?
Well, we'll just talk in context generally, I guess, of my education bills. You know, you work with constituents, you hear about concerns, you have some personal concerns of your own, and you work with staff to come up with what you think is a really great bill draft, and then you start to circulate it, and all of a sudden a bunch of stakeholder groups or other legislators all of a sudden come to your office or call you with their interpretation of the bill. And I learned quickly that only helps make your bill a better piece of legislation, because first of all, I'm never of the mindset that you should do something just because you can. I don't believe in forcing legislation. If you look at my legislative history, almost every single one of my bills was passed out of the legislature unanimously, and certainly with those that didn't, a broad majority of support from both parties and both houses. And I think as you engage in a collective conversation with others around what their concerns are about issues you may not have been aware of about issues that the bill might create that you weren't aware of, and you come together and have collaborative, consensus-based conversations with everybody that has some kind of interest or stake in the bill, you get what is a much better solution to often what is actually a global problem instead of just a singular problem that you're hearing about for the first time. So bills take many twists and turns. I have never been disappointed with the way that any of my legislation's ever turned out. I think it's only ever been stronger legislation, and certainly because of the consensus and the buy-in from multiple stakeholders across many institutions and throughout the community, it has staying power. Those aren't going to be the pieces of legislation that I have to worry about being overturned session to session, and as you're aware, that happens.
Senator Woodhouse, what would you say?
Well, absolutely what Becky has said is so true. I would like to trace history for a certain bill. We all have bills that we put in as individual sponsors. We get other individuals, other senators, our assembly people to sign on with us. But we also get bill requests from members of the community because they have special interests that they want to be addressed. What I want to share with you, I think because of what we're here about today, I think it's appropriate for me to tell you about this one. And both Tyrone and Becky know about it. And Louis, you probably do too. But back in 2015, my Nevada youth legislator, in case you don't know, we have a program that every Senate district has a youth, sophomore, junior, or senior, who has been identified from our Senate districts, and that group is trained by legislative staff as well as many of the legislators on how to be a legislator, and they do town halls and all that kind of thing. But my student legislator from Senate District 5 came to me with a request that he and another young man in his class felt was really important. And I totally agreed with them, and that was they wanted to make changes in how the curriculum is structured and delivered regarding financial literacy. And so we worked hard on it, the three of us, and we worked with the school district a little bit, and we brought our bill forward. So this was 2015. We got it through the Assembly Education Committee. Senator Harris was very gracious to myself and the two young men when they testified. In fact, they were really exciting. But we couldn't get it out of Senate Finance because it had a fiscal note on it. So in the interim, after the 2015 session, we went back to work on the bill. Evan Gong, who was my youth legislator at the time, continued to work with me. We brought in the curriculum people from the school district. We also brought in the business community that had interest in financial literacy. And we worked and worked and worked on that bill, brought it forward again this last session, and went through the Senate Education Committee, Senate Finance. We got funding put in it for professional development and resources for the teachers, moved on to the Assembly and passed. So things don't happen overnight. Sometimes they take more than one legislative session to be accomplished, but I just have to applaud those two young men, and especially Evan Gong, for being so persistent that we wanted to make sure that we increased the ability of our students to receive information at the elementary, middle, and high school level in financial literacy. So it was accomplished.
Sure.
Well, I don't have quite the track record like Senator Harris. Not all of my bills were unanimously passed. She gets to brag. But I would say that, I really don't think that there's, I'll say for me, I don't think any of my bills have passed just how I brought it forth. I mean, it always, even if must and shall is changed, something is changed in the bill. But I would say I had a bill on the Nevada Advisory Commission on Mentoring, and it passed. It didn't pass in 2015. And I mean, I think everyone in this room, if you really do an analysis of yourself, there's someone that has helped you along the way, and we call them a mentor. And so the bill is to do two things: to establish a commission to look at guidelines and practices for our mentoring groups, because there's a lot out there that say, we mentor, but there are some key guidelines, whether you're very grassroots or if you're a national type of mentoring group, that in a perfect world we should have. And so we as the state of Nevada, we should be looking at that. And then secondly, almost every mentoring group, they need money. And we know that in our state, there's just lots of dollars that kind of float past Nevada and go their own way. And so that's the whole purpose of it. So anyway, long story short, in 2015, my bill got reduced all the way down to like, it was just, it's what we call stripped down, where you basically go home and like, okay, what is this? So, and it's kind of a nice way to say we didn't want to kill your bill, but we weren't going to pass it how it was. And so it just lets you work harder and harder with your constituency. And I'm just so honored and pleased to say that Assembly Bill 114, if not one of the most participatory hearings in Education Committee, it definitely was Assembly Bill 144, to see some of our young boys tie their own bow ties to go to Grant Sawyer and testify and say what the value of a mentor is for them and how important that was. Just totally warmed everybody's hearts. So I would say that bill, and finally passing and being on the Assembly floor at around maybe like 11:35 at night, and to get a text from someone from the governor's office saying, hey, Assemblyman, your mentoring bill passed. I mean, wow, what a warming feeling it is. So it was good.
That's great. Well, in the interest of time and out of respect for your time, this will be the last question, so I want you to think real hard about this one. What one bill do you see coming in the next session that you haven't seen before, that you think is unique to other sessions? Or what issue? Maybe it's not a bill yet, but it's an issue. What one issue do you see coming? Maybe it came from the last session, or maybe is an evolved issue.
Education-wise, or just
Yeah,
in
no,
general?
of course, no, of course, education-wise.
Oh, gosh. It's going to require a little bit of thought there.
That wasn't in the email, that question.
No, that was not an email. This is the pop quiz portion of the panel. Maybe it's an issue that kind of got combined with another issue from the last session, or got collapsed as part of a legislative bill.
Well, I can't really address one exactly like you are posing to us, but I initially, when we were talking about your first question, I mentioned the K-12 funding formula. That does have to come back. It was Senate Bill 178 last time, and what we did with it, Tyrone and Senator Dennis and Assemblywoman Diaz and I and a whole lot of school district folks sat around a table for many mornings at 6:30, 7 a.m. prior to our money committee meetings, and then again late at night, trying to find a resolution for this issue. And so the first steps that we were able to take were to add $1,200 per student on the base, that these students would be in the bottom quartile in achievement, which means they're the one-star schools and the two-star schools, but these, we also set aside the Zoom kids and the Victory kids because they already had additional dollars. And then we put in the bill, and some of you are gonna groan, but we put in the bill for an additional study, because we keep studying this issue and just don't really come back with the right answers. But we do have a study going on. This time it's not going to be a legislative study. It's being done by a consultant, and actually I think the State Board of Ed is finishing up that RFP and selecting that firm that will move forward. But that firm is to do a number of things. One is to look at where should we be going, how do we get there, and what is the timeline for it? Because you can't take everything we need to do and do it all in one legislative session, because we don't have the funding for that. So it's just too important not to put it out there for us to address. So that's my 2 cents.
I think that some of the most innovative legislation that we'll see in the 2019 legislative session probably hasn't even been contemplated yet. And I'm going to give you some examples. So just in the last few legislative sessions, we have enacted Zoom schools, brand new concept. 15 Victory Schools was built off a Zoom model, but it's its own concept. We had school gardens brought up in the last legislative session. So I am interested in finding ways that we can enhance the education in meaningful ways for our children, whether that's through more intensive programs that are tailor-made to a community, or through adapting science and math and economics through school gardens while children are learning to grow. So I will be interested in continuing the conversation and finding some innovative ways to engage our children in school in meaningful ways.
I would say, and really something that's going to be revisited is the Clark County School District reorganization. Because you can't, I mean, it's 320,000 plus students, plus the administrators, plus the teachers, plus the support staff, on and on and on. You can't think that you pass the law and it's just going to be fine. It's always going to be a work in progress. And one of the things that Joyce and we sit on is they're doing a budget committee now, just about funding and so on and so forth. You have the school outreach teams, school SOTs.
The SOTs, yeah.
Yeah, school organization teams. I know the SOT. Okay, all these acronyms to learn. So I think that that's going to have a highlight, even though that's not the bulk of our state, that's not statewide. But I think once and if that model becomes a good model, who knows? Washoe might want to adopt something like that. Some of the rural school districts might want to adopt that. So you just never know. But I think that we don't need to pass a law sometimes and say it's good. We have to continue to nurture it. If we need to put more resources towards it, we need to do that. If we need to continue to massage what the law says, we need to do that. So I would say just that whole reorganization process has to happen. And I just want to say is that when that bill first came out, just want everybody to understand the context of that. That all happened the last 10 minutes of the 2015 legislative session. And so people had to, and one thing as a legislator, we can't say, well, I want to push the middle button. You have to push a red button or a green button. And so I think that would be the biggest thing that I think we're going to be looking at. And there's a lot of interim work too that we're going to be doing on our education committee.
Which also helps inform what's coming in the next legislative session. Well, Assemblyman Thompson, Senator Harris, Senator Woodhouse, thank you all very much for your time here today. Thank you for your service to the state of Nevada, and thank you for everything that you do for education.